Hi guys, and welcome back, or welcome to Thunder Bay, my City Skylines 1 attempt at a Floridian city. As always, I'm your host and creator Legio, and I'm happy to have you here. And if what you see makes you happy, please do the typical YouTube stuff down below. I would greatly appreciate that. So today we're building out our main grid for what's going to become the downtown area. And this is more or less just going to be a guide that's going to get reshaped quite a bit as we progress through the build. This episode is essentially me giving myself a framework to work with. And I'm not going to rigidly stick to what I get built today, but instead kind of just patchwork different builds together and make the road networks fit to what I need them to. You'll see what I mean in the future episodes. But that's all future talk. Let's talk about what I'm actually doing here. So I start off by building out the main road for what's going to become the downtown area. And I use this modified T interchange, or at least that's what I call it, to kind of make the quote-unquote entrance to the area. Now this obviously isn't going to be the only entrance. This area is going to really web out. There's going to be a lot of sprawl on this map, a whole lot of suburban sprawl in fact. And it's going to get quite a few more connections, but I like to use this as the entrance because it's going to feed the main artery for the area. It gives me a nice clean starting point to work from. And my plan is, as this area develops, I can always add and subtract from the road. As I was building and later on, I found this area was kind of plain. So I do plan on jazzing it up and doing some overcomplicated street work. Because I mean, what is a downtown area without some overcomplicated street work? So I'm just putting the finishing touches up here on this interchange because I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there is a pretty significant height difference and it does kind of tear the train in a weird way. I think the map thing just hides it really well because on playback it looks better than it did when I was playing. So I then build out this intersection here by using the marking tool, and I use a grass median there. I don't know how realistic it is to have that, but I really like using these grass urban roads. I think that's an amazing asset on the workshop, and I wanted to use it as my main road. And then I use the intersection marking tool to basically just make a seamless transition, so to speak, from the highway onto that main road. I think it works. I really like the way it turned out. Again, I don't know how realistic that is, but it's a thing we have now. And then I just spend a little bit of time touching up that main road, making sure all the turn lanes and everything makes sense. It took longer than I thought it would. I'm not very good at that apparently. And then here I am basically just filling in the grid with a bunch of one-way streets, and then I'm putting some back alleyways in. This is kind of a common theme I do with my cities. Kind of a trademark, if you will, build a grid and then put an alleyway in the back. I've done that forever, so I like having those there. They'll probably get changed up again as we move and expand upon this grid. So I wanted to take a second and talk about the area that I'm actually building on, because if you're familiar with the Tampa area, you'll probably have already noticed, or noticed going forward, I'm taking a pretty big deviation from reality. I've opted to put my downtown in a much different location than how it is in actuality. The original downtown, which I'll go ahead and put up on your screen right now, is northeast of where I'm building. It's at the mouth of the river, which I mean does make sense. That is pretty typical for downtowns. But I want to do something a little bit different with my build. I really wanted to have my skyline sit out on a peninsula somewhat. I think that's a really cool image, especially when you get some distant views of skyscrapers just kind of rising out of the water. I think that's a really cool look. So if you look at the map I'm building on, I am building on the smaller middle peninsula there. And this area I believe is called Tampa South. At least that's what it showed me when I looked up a neighborhood map of the Tampa Bay area. It looks like towns like Gandy Gardens, Ballast Point, and Culver Heights are here. And it's also where the MacDill Air Force Base is, which is a really big deal. I'll talk about that later on in another episode. And in reality, this area is actually a lot of low-density residential suburban sprawl. I'm pretty sure you can kind of see that from the Google Map images. But I wanted to repurpose this space and use it more as my central hub. Again, I like the idea of the Skylines sitting out there, but I also think it's a really good location for a downtown. It's very central, so a lot of your important things like convention centers, I don't know, arenas, stuff like that. I think it's a nice central location for the entire area to kind of congregate to. So that's one of the reasons I picked it. Also, really like the idea of the skyscrapers coming out of the water thing. And I'm sure the downtown of where Tampa is actually does work. I'm sure it's there for a reason, most likely the river. But I have other plans for that area. Like I said in the other episodes, I want my build to be different from what's actually there. It's more of a reimagination and not a recreation. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. And this area that I'm building on, it's going to have all the main features essentially for the map. Like the downtown financial district, it's going to have some kind of arena, a historic district, an arts district. It'll have like all the quintessential big city urban things. So a lot of a good amount of detail work is going to actually occur in this area. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on this peninsula, and I want to make it look decent. When you have all those main things, you need to make the area look good, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time detailing the entire map. Some areas are just not going to get a lot of detail. It'll probably be, like, for example, if I'm doing a suburban sprawl, I'm probably just going to take a bunch of suburban houses, slap them down, and put a whole bunch of trees around them and call it good. I'm not going to go in and tightly detail everything. But in my financial district and this area in general, it'll probably receive a good amount of detail because a couple reasons. First, there's always a lot of detail put into downtown areas. They're high traffic areas, so typically the city wants it to look really nice, so they put a lot of effort into making that area look nice. And also the other one, and probably the biggest factor, is you guys like downtowns. That's what people come here to watch. They typically come in to see the big builds on the downtown, and they like the detail work in those areas. So I'm going to try to give that to you. And in the name of giving you guys what you want, let's go ahead and read some YouTube comments, because I know I would want that. So the first comment we have here is from Wismo57, saying they love detail projects. Thanks for sharing. Well, first off, you're welcome, and thank you for the comment. Also, yeah, I like doing detail projects as long as it interests me. If it doesn't interest me, it's going to get minimal effort. So hopefully what interests me and what interests you coincide with the detail. But anyways, thank you for the comment. The next comment we have here is from Rob V5299. And they say they are also a CS1 player that hasn't switched over to CS2, mainly because their PC won't run it. And they say it's nice to see someone other than Biffa, and I assume that's Overcharged Egg and City Planner Plays, still putting out CS1 content. They say thank you, and they are subscribing. So first off, thank you for the comment. Second off, thank you for the subscribe. And yeah, no, I came back to CS1. I did put out some CS2 content, and it was okay. I was enjoying the vanilla, but it got pretty boring pretty quick for me. It's really hard to match the amount of content that CS1 has and the openness and everything you can do in this game because of the mods. And I'm sure CS2 will get there one day, but right now it is a metaphorical dumpster fire. And I'm not going to dog them too much, but right now CS2 just is not appealing to me, especially from everything I see on, say, Reddit and other social media. Like, the game is just not doing well. They had to issue refunds on DLC, and that's how you know it's got some red flags. Will I one day go back to it? Maybe, whenever the community and the developers get everything fixed that I want fixed. But for now, I'm pretty darn happy being back in CS1. The amount of control and detail I can put in this is just insane. Like, to this day, it still blows my mind that this game came out in 2015 and I can do these things. I know it took us a long time, but we're here. I also really like the fact that updates are no longer going to break my saves. Like, that's a huge appeal to me. Like, I just love the fact that I can do all this building and not worry about an update ruining my city. But anyways, yeah, I'm going to keep putting out the CS1 content for the foreseeable future, mainly because I'm liking what I'm doing, and it's, CS1 is just a better game than CS2 right now. That's what it is. So anyways, thank you guys for the comments. I really appreciate it. If you want your comment read, you actually have to put a comment below. But we have a small little intermission coming up. I'm not going to talk during it. It's just going to basically be a flyover of what we built, just to give you an idea of what's going on, and we'll be back with a fast play in just a little bit. Alrighty, and we're back. Hopefully you guys now have a clearer picture of what we're doing here. It's nothing special, but it's a pretty solid grid for us to work with, and that's all I really need is a solid grid, because again, I'm going to be tearing this bad boy up from time to time to fit my needs. So anyways, if you are familiar with my channel, you would know that I like to weave history lessons into my builds, and I do plan on doing that with this series as well from time to time. I'm going to primarily be focusing on Florida's history, but I'll also be delving into some other relevant topics. Because at a quick glance, it looks like I should have some pretty solid historical events and themes to draw from. The area of Florida has seen a lot in its time, so it should give me quite a bit of material to work with. I plan on covering as much as I can with it, more than just the U.S. history of Florida, but also the Spanish colonization, the first peoples of Florida, and maybe even delve into like pirate history. That could be kind of fun. So, we'll cover as much as we can with the amount of time that I'm given. But for the first history lesson today, I thought we'd start way back with the geological beginnings of Florida, because you can't really have human history without geological history. First and foremost, I want to emphasize I am not a geologist, so I'm probably going to butcher some pronunciations and I might misinterpret some of the information I found. But I do want to go over the makeup of the land because it's pretty important, and I'm just going to give the old college try. So let's just get to it. First, before we get into the geological beginnings, it's probably important to understand what Florida is geographically. It's a peninsula that sits in the southeast of the United States, if you weren't aware, if you're not familiar with U.S. geography. Its primary base, the main land that it's made up of, that is made of karst limestone, and it's a porous material. It's very porous, actually. And on top of that sits a sandy soil. So when you combine the two of them, they're not really it's not ideal grounds to build on. So that's why you don't have a whole bunch of massive skyscrapers down there, is it just can't support the weight. Also, when you combine sandy soil with limestone, you get something called sinkholes, because the water can erode and create caverns in the limestone, and then sand just isn't very strong or sturdy to build on to begin with. So you get sinkholes in the area. They're not uncommon, and they're pretty known in the Tampa region especially. Overall, this whole formation is known as karst topography. I suggest you look it up if you want to learn more about it. I don't know a whole lot about it. I just kind of read what I could. So anyways, Florida's creation dates back approximately 500 million years ago during the Paleozoic era. And at the time, much of Florida was underwater and sediments would gather on the seafloor. And over time, the sediment did build up and it would gradually turn into the limestone that we talked about earlier. And this created what was known as the Florida Platform, which is a rather large landmass actually. Most of it is underwater actually. I can put some images up on the screen for you to see that. And then around 65 million years ago, during the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic eras, major changes occurred. Florida was part of the supercontinent known as Pangaea. I'm sure we've all heard about that. And it was originally attached to the African plate. But when Pangaea began to break apart, Florida was carried off with the North American plate, gradually making its way to its modern-day location. And during the Pleistocene epoch, Florida would experience many ice ages. And with the rise of the glaciers, you would have a big drop in the sea levels, which would inevitably expose a large amount of the Florida platform, almost doubling or tripling the size of Florida depending on what area it was happening in, what time frame. And the area was much cooler and much drier than it is today, and this resulted in a large open savanna style geography. And this landscape was soon home to large megafauna, such as large bison, mastodons, mammoths, and even llamas. Yeah, you heard me. They had large llamas in the area. They were known as paleo llamas. Here's a picture of them up on the screen now. And that's just so Florida to have giant llamas, because it's Florida. If you live here, you understand what I'm talking about. But anyways, I think that's a pretty good overview of the geological history of Florida. It sets us up pretty nicely for the next lesson, which is probably going to be on the first human populations to enter the area during the last ice age. So look forward to that, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this lesson. Again, I'm a historian by nature, so geology isn't really my strong point, but I do think it's important to know and understand the environment around us to better understand what is occurring in it. If you found anything I talked about interesting, I did put a whole bunch of sources down below, and I suggest you also check out a YouTuber known as Atlas Pro. Put a little image of his channel up on the screen. He does an amazing job covering geology, geography, and pretty much anything you want to know about the planet Earth, from the oceans to the continents. Like he covers it. Very interesting. He does a really good job with his channel. I really enjoy watching him. So anyways, that's enough about geological history. Let's go ahead and get back to what I am doing on screen. So here we're just expanding out the grid that we've already got started. I have a plan for how this grid layout's going to go. This is a Florida style city, and if you look at Tampa Bay, it's very gridlocked, so to say. A lot of grid there. So I kind of took the inspiration from that, and I'm going to break it into different regions. I kind of talked about that earlier, but up where that main road was, where we spent a good deal of time in the beginning of the episode, that's probably going to end up being our main downtown where the skyscrapers are, the financial district, if you will. Kind of like it being there. It's a good central location for people to get to and from work. And then closer towards the water's edge, towards the tip of the peninsula, I'm thinking that might be pretty cool to have like a historic district, maybe some Spanish style buildings. Not really sure how it's going to turn out just yet. I also know I'm going to be putting in a pretty big park within the downtown area at some point, because I think that'd be pretty cool. So just kind of gonna go with the flow on that one. And then out here, I'm continuing the grid, and this is gonna end up being a lot of low density suburban sprawl. Because if you look at the Tampa Bay map on Google Earth or just Google in general, you'll notice that even the suburbs are laid out in a grid pattern. So I'm kind of just using that as well. Just going to lay this out in a grid for a good chunk of it, and then whenever time comes, I'll break up the grid as I need to. And I think that's going to actually work to our favor, because what I've noticed whenever I look at stuff on a Google Earth image or maps or whatever I'm looking at is your main cities, while they do have their grid, it's in the older part of town or the financial district, like the big central hub of things. And then as you get away from the city, the grid kind of breaks down, so to speak. So as we get out into the suburbs and away from our central business core, we'll be breaking the grid. It's going to be a placeholder for now to just kind of give me an idea of what I'm going to put in later. It's pretty typical for American cities to be that way. We as Americans really like our space. We like things big. It's what we do. If you look anywhere outside of the East Coast, a lot of the cities or states, if you will, they all are fairly large, because the East Coast had the influence of European colonialism still, and then as you get into the Midwest, they start to lose that influence and get their own identity as Americans. There's a whole topic to that I could cover at a different time. It's pretty fascinating, actually, and you can just see it by looking at maps, but we'll get into that later. What I'm doing here is I spent way too much time trying to make another artery road. Just trying to figure out how to connect this road up to the highway to give another access point into these outer perimeter towns that are going to be taking place there. And again, the topography kind of sucked to deal with. I had to use Move It a lot to get what I wanted done. But ultimately, I like the end result. I think it turned out pretty well. It makes sense, and then, it looks good. It looks good in place. And then I'm basically going to be finishing off by just some touch-ups. We're putting in another interchange here. I think this one is just going to be a simple diamond interchange. And I just use our little hero of a semi-truck to get all my measurements looking good. Yeah, this ends up being another diamond interchange. If I remember, I did this one really quick. And I didn't really care how it looked because I think when I was building at the time, I was pretty sure I'm going to come back to this area anyways and change this interchange. So I just wanted something functional for right now. And diamonds function. So later on, I'll probably come back and completely demolish that interchange. Yeah, it looks terrible, but that's fine for right now because I knew when I was building this, it wasn't staying. Yeah, that'll probably get completely demolished. But yeah, the last thing we end up doing is we work on some key walls along this main road that's kind of along the bay. I like how this turns out. What I ended up doing is using the node controller. And I had to insert a node there and then change the key that was there to remove the trees and the benches and everything. And I was able to use the node controller in the freestyle mode to get it to line up actually really well. And I think that turns out good. I really like the way it turned out. And then I just go ahead and take the terrain tool and smooth everything out, make sure the water makes sense. This was a huge time suck. Took me quite a bit of time, but I really do like the results of how it turned out. Water is always a pain to deal with in this game. But that's pretty much all the time I had for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. If you did, you know what to do down below. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you're not new to the channel, please leave a comment or hit a like. It really does help. And if you really enjoyed what you saw, I do have the Buy Me a Coffee page now. Again, I don't expect anything, but if you throw money at that, it might help improve the quality of the videos. But with all that said, guys, I think I'm going to pretty much just let things play out, and I'll see you in the next one.